What we're going to do is we're going to look at Reading Part B, format and what to expect. So our contents include some basic information, some information about the content of the reading, and we'll talk a little bit about the questions, and then I'll give some advice at the end. So basic information. Let's go and have a look at our document, which is here. Okay, so some basic information for you. There are 6 texts, okay? There are 6 texts, and those texts are between 100 and 150 words long. So they're short-ish, aren't they? They're short-ish. They're not very long, and there can be some differences. Some seem really short, and some seem a bit longer. The six texts, and you've got 6 questions. Okay, 6 questions, that's 1 question per text. Okay, that's how that's going to work. Now, in terms of timing, the timing really is, it's your choice, isn't it? Because part B and C, you get 45 minutes. And if we think about or we consider how long that actually is for each section, well, really, if you think about it, B and C, think about the number of questions. You've got 6 here and you've got 16 there. Okay, so what I generally do is I generally have a kind of general rule where I think, okay, I'm going to try and do 2 minutes for each one of these. And that leaves me a nice amount of time here, doesn't it? So that leaves me, if I do over here, that would leave me 32 minutes. Because that would be 12 minutes in total. But as I said, it's up to you. You choose, okay, whatever you want to do. But I would be saying, let's aim for between 12 and 14 minutes to be doing part B. All right. So 6 texts, 6 questions. Let's try and do that within 12 to 14 minutes. Let's aim to do it, but you will not be limited, okay? You will not be limited in that. All right, so next point. What's in these texts? Okay, what's the content of these texts? Well, I'll show you an example, okay? So let's go and have a look here. This is an example, okay? It's all about workplace. All right, so we're going to see things like, we're going to see, let me scroll down a little bit. We're going to see memos. All right, we're going to see memos. We are going to see emails, guidelines. We're going to see instructions. Okay, all the kinds of things that you could imagine seeing in a healthcare workplace. Memos, emails, guidelines, instructions, reminders. And what I will say is this. We've got this word in English, dry. Okay, it's not very interesting. And I know that sounds like I'm being very judgmental and opinionated about Part B. But if you compare it to Part C is full of opinions and history and research results. There are quite detailed descriptions of bodily processes and how treatment works. All of those things are quite useful. But in OET Part B, Reading Part B, it's not very interesting, I must say. Instructions about how a mask works, or how somebody should blow into a pipe, or a reminder about when you can call a department. They're not really very interesting, okay? And that is a challenge, okay? That is challenging, okay? Because it's a bit boring and you're not very interested in it, so you're not motivated by it. I find that what often happens is that the language can be a bit repetitive. Yeah, it's quite technical, and often it feels repetitive. Okay, it feels repetitive. And so you could find yourself reading the same line again a few times. It's quite difficult. So let's look at this text, okay? Extract from a manual on surgery. Disclosure. So generally the vocabulary for Part B is not too tricky. You're not going to be that challenged by it. There's not going to be such a wide range of vocabulary as there is in Part C. And it's not going to be quite as technical as the language which is in Part A, which is often quite technical. But there is some technical language. Here we're talking about the delivery of bad news. And you can see that it's direct. It's present tense. We're giving instructions here. So do this, do that, very imperative. And what we're being asked to do here is to be able to understand these texts in their entirety, okay? And also be able to pick out specific details at times, okay? So let me move on, okay? We'll move on and we'll talk about the questions themselves, okay? So the questions are multiple choice, okay? They're multiple choice questions. So they're multiple choice with 3 options we can see here. We call this section here, we call that the question stem, okay? That's the question stem. And we call these ones here the answer options, okay? That's what they are, the answer options. And similar to reading Part C, where there are 4 options, what we would advise is read this question stem, skim the text, review the options, and use your keyword analysis to be able to see if the options match or if they don't. I'm not going to go into too much detail about strategy and technique here, but ultimately, quite often they're asking you for the gist of a text. But it's not every time they're asking you for the gist. Sometimes they do. They ask you for the gist. They ask you for the overall meaning. But sometimes they do ask you to pull out specific meanings, like what should you not do here, like staff must avoid. And in the text, it won't say staff must avoid. It will say something like you must not do, or it will say something like this should be avoided, or this should not be done. And that's a bit tricky. And like with all of these multiple choice questions, they are going to try and distract you. They're going to mention simplistic language. Okay, but do they say that you have to avoid using it? Or do they do the opposite? Do they say you should use simplistic language? That's what's going to happen with these options. Just like any multiple choice question, they try and make all of the options seem possible, to seem feasible. And what you've got to do is you've got to use your language skills to be able to say, A, does it match to the text? Okay, oops, let me pull this down. A, does it match to the text? And B, does it answer the question? Okay, every time we're doing multiple choice questions, we are asking ourselves that, okay? Language skills, exam skills. But as I said, we're not going to go into too much detail about that. We've got many more videos and classes where we can help people with that. Okay, so next section, the last one, I'll give you some advice. Okay, so in my opinion, what we need to do is we need to work on specific things, okay? But the first most important piece of advice I give everybody is read. Read more. So read in your workplace now, read at home, read everything, all right? And obviously these kinds of texts, they're not just used at work. You read instructions when you're trying to put together a table. You read manuals when you're trying to understand how your new DVD player works, okay? You read instructions at the train station. We all do this. It's all around us, this kind of language. So read, read, read. Next, improve your skimming and your scanning. Okay? Skimming enables you to digest a paragraph quickly and get the overall meaning. Scanning helps you, once you've analysed the keywords, to go to the text and find where the answer is. Okay? And finally, use the elimination technique that we teach at SET. It's really a very, very useful way of doing and improving your chances of being successful in multiple choice questions. All right, so I hope this video was useful and a good introduction to OET Reading Part B. Good luck. If you are with us live on Facebook now, if you want to ask us any questions about what we're doing, how we do our training, if you want to find out more about reading or any part of the test, let us know. Pop something in the comments box below and we'll get back to you. Okay, take care everyone. Bye-bye.